Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast, traders. I am FX Telepath, and I've been doing these forecasts for over 5 years. So in my opinion, you guys are in the right place. With that being said, let's get right into the forecast. So as far as the US dollar goes, the DXY, we've called out both of these weekly demand zones, and we've seen reactions off of them from here to here for that one. And now we've seen the reaction from weekly demand to right there. And now we are kind of floating back towards the weekly demand, but why I think it could hold, the reason is because this monthly dotted line you're seeing here, that's a monthly demand zone right there. So in my opinion, that is why I think we could potentially see the price continue to go up on the DXY, as well as other reasons I will show you here in a minute. But that is why I'm expecting price to continue to rally up. And look, even if price breaks it, I'm already seeing the comments in the future. Oh, wow, you're such a dummy. You shouldn't have been bullish on the dollar. I've already got those comments both times as price pulled into this weekly demand, and we called out both of those trades off those weekly zones. So already got those negative comments. I'll probably get them again if we break it. But look, when we have a weekly demand in control, and especially a weekly demand and inside of an overall macro monthly demand, we kind of have to go with that, right? Especially after we just targeted some sort of liquidity here. That's why I am expecting price to continue to go up. Now on the 1 hour chart, usually I like to go top down, but we're actually going to skip right to the 1 hour chart. Not the most bullish sign, I would say. We had a pretty good demand zone. This demand zone was broken pretty easily. I mean, it's not like we had an aggressive move into the zone. Price just kind of chugged along and we broke right through that demand zone. Definitely not the most bullish sign. However, on the daily chart, look at this. We have a beautiful daily upward trend, and the trend line is currently holding. We had a pretty green day off of the trend line initially as we contacted it the second day, and that was looking pretty bullish. However, we obviously came right back in, and we are touching the trend line and testing the trend line again for basically the third day in a row. But as long as this trend line's holding, I'm going to have to remain bullish in the dollar. And it's not like we only have this daily upward trend going with us. It's the fact that we have a daily upward trend as we come off of a weekly demand and a monthly demand. So hopefully you guys can see why I am so biased towards the long side in the dollar. And I'm not saying the dollar is going to go up to 110, guys. I'm just saying, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if we see the dollar at least go up, break above 102 again, up to this daily supply and that weekly supply above. So this week, I will definitely be monitoring this daily upward trend line, especially since we've already contacted it and we're currently testing it, you know, as I speak. On the 4 hour chart, we'll be monitoring this 4 hour time frame as well. The reason is because we broke the downward trend line. If we can get a good push up, that's obviously going to be a pretty bullish sign, and it's definitely possible we hesitate around this 99.91 area of supply. It's a very good supply zone, very nice move away. So if we do push up to here, I think we will hesitate here, but ultimately I think we will be breaking it if we push up. So for this week, guys, we will definitely be monitoring that daily upward trend, and even going back to the 1 hour chart, we'll be monitoring this as well to make it even more clear for you guys. Hopefully I'm marking out the low and I'm marking out the high here right now. As long as we're in between the high and the low, we are basically ranging. This trend line pretty much irrelevant now. So we are pretty much ranging. If we break this trend line, that will give us a 1 hour downward trend line and downward trend. Then we could look for shorts on a 5-minute time frame. If we break above this high, we will have an upward trend on the 1 hour chart. Then we could look for longs on a 5-minute time frame. Obviously, since the daily trend is up, we prefer the 1 hour chart to be trending up. And if you are going to get in long, if this happens, you could look for a larger risk to reward. If we do break the low, that's fine. You could still look for shorts, but you're going against a daily trend. So at that point, you got to be a little bit more aggressive with your profit taking. So for this week, we will be monitoring the daily upward trend line and the high and the low in the 1 hour chart to see kind of what trend we're going to get, which could definitely tell us what's going to happen with this daily trend line. All right, on to the forecast for the euro US dollar on the weekly time frame. We do not have that opposing weekly supply, just like we're into the weekly demand on the dollar. Usually we will see a weekly supply on the euro. We don't quite have that here, so it's a little bit tricky. However, on the daily time frame, we actually have a very good daily supply that removed an upward trend line. It's in control right now, and in my opinion, that's why we have actually seen the euro hesitate the last couple of days here. And if you guys are enjoying this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. I do these forecasts for free every single Saturday. So the daily supply is in control. We definitely could see price push down, which kind of lines up with our dollar bullishness, right? So definitely very different price action here on the dollar versus the euro as far as the oppositeness of it goes. But look, the daily supply is in control. We definitely could see price push down, and we kind of have already. But the thing we're going to be looking for basically is on the 1 hour chart. On the 4 hour chart, we had this trend line removed. The issue is we don't have a zone here that removed it. When a trend line gets removed, we want to have a nice supply zone here to get in short. I didn't see that here, so there's really not a lot going on. But if we do break the lows here, then that will be kind of our cue to look for shorts on the day trading timeframes. The other thing we could be doing is watching this 1 hour time frame here. So if price pushes down, if we break this 1 hour trend line, that's great. If there's a supply zone here, that would be our trading short trade right there. Why? Because again, the daily supply is in control. When we're trading at a daily supply zone, we want to look for 1 hour supply zones coming off of it. So a break of this trend line will kind of be our confirmation as we come off of the daily supply above. So that's what I'll be waiting for this week on the euro. And then, like I said, even if we just break the low in the 4 hour chart, that's going to be a sign that that daily supply is holding, and we could even push down to the daily demand at 114. Alrighty, on the forecast for gold, we will do a full top-down approach so you guys really understand my perspective. So my perspective long-term is that gold will be going up. I personally think we will be easily breaking the all-time highs, and that in the future, gold will be well over $5,000 an ounce. That doesn't mean I think price is just going to go there now. It means that price could pull back down to this weekly demand and then rally. So there's tons of money to be made on the move to the downside. There's even more money to be made with the trend. That's why I'm hoping for a pullback down to that weekly demand. It doesn't look like we are getting it now. On the daily time frame, look how terrible gold price action has been. This is what I like to just call pretty much just a range. We have kind of broken out of the range here a little bit. However, it's very clear that we are in that range. And we have a very, very clear liquidity area up above to target. So I think we will be pushing up to there eventually. It's a little bit tricky to tell when, but we're going to go to the lower time frames and see potential trading opportunities where we could be targeting that liquidity. Now, on the 1 hour chart, I prefer the 1 hour trend than the 4 hour trend. Very nice 1 hour downward trend line. As long as this downward trend line is holding, I think looking for shorts on a 5-minute time frame is going to be good. It is counter trend to the weekly chart, but that's fine. It's this trend. 5-minute time frame shorts are going to be completely fine. Profit margin is very clear, which is why I also like this the shorting opportunity. The profit margin is down to this 4 hour demand zone. That's the profit margin that I view. So if you get in short up here or whatever in a 5-minute time frame, that's great. Once we start to contact this 4 hour demand zone, and once we're close, even if you get in short right here, that's fine. Just remember, we're very close to a pretty significant demand zone that removes supply that I personally think we could see a move off of. So this is where I think that trend could end. So if we do contact this demand zone, that's when I'd be more aggressive with your profit taking. And then at that point, I think it's a great area to look for a potential long trade to the upside. So it's a very nice time where we have a nice trend to the downside where we could justify looking for counter trend day trading shorts down to a significant demand zone where we can then get a potential long trade at. And even if we push up to this supply, it's a pretty good supply zone. It could be used for a quick counter trend short trade. And if we remove that supply, any demand zone there is going to be a pretty good long opportunity as well. So at this point, all going to revolve around that 4 hour and the 1 hour trend and the 4 hour demand zone here on gold. And it's possible that, look, it might be that we want to push, that the banks want to push price down to the 4 hour demand zone and then target that liquidity. That's what we could be seeing. And that's why, again, I'm justifying potentially looking for some short trades down to that 4 hour demand zone where we can then look for a dip buying opportunity. On to the forecast for the USDJPY. A very interesting thing happened this past week. We had a very nice upward trend line right here. That trend line was removed. Now we are basically sitting right in the middle of supply and demand. So what do we do? How do we view this market? Well, again, based on the DXY, we have to remain bullish because at least on the DXY, the daily trend line is actually still holding. It's not holding here, but that's what we do have going for us. So we are going to have a bullish bias here, and a pullback down to this daily demand is going to represent a pretty good dip buying opportunity. And you can even justify looking for maybe quick shorts in that supply as well. So that's the daily chart on the yen. Let's go ahead and look at the lower time frames here on the 4 hour chart. The 4 hour downward trend line is being respected beautifully. I want to make it very clear. The trend line is attached from here to here. It has nothing to do with this. What this represents here is the way I drew my trend line being respected. Trend lines, something we go over in the membership a lot. And that's, again, I always see my trend lines reacting like this beautifully. That's not where I attach it to. The trend line's attached here. This is just a reaction off of the properly drawn trend line. So I will say, as long as this 4-hour trend line's holding, I think looking for shorts on a 50-minute time frame could be justified. I think there's nothing wrong with it. And what I like about it is it kind of shows us where price could be headed. If that 4-hour trend line continues to hold, that's going to tell me where this daily chart's going. And that's going to tell me that the daily chart's going down to the daily demand. That's why watching this trend line is going to be significant on the 4-hour time frame. The issue is that we have a pretty good 1-hour demand zone sitting down below. And on Friday here, we actually based up and created a support liquidity, which actually makes me a little bit more confident that the zone could actually hold. So if we do get a pullback down to this support level again and get more reactions off it like this, I'm going to be pretty bullish at this 1-hour demand zone down at 146.67. I think it will be a high probability trading area, and it's a very good move away. Now, if you don't feel confident in it, you could just wait for the zone to be hit and look for confirmation trades on a 5-minute time frame, which are basically supply and demand zones on a lower time frame inside of a higher time frame. And we will be doing that in the daily market breakdown videos for the Diamond members. If you want to trade alongside myself and the community, join the Diamond membership for exclusive access to our daily market breakdown videos and catch trades like these. Plus, dive deep with our full-length forecast covering 26 plus markets, our interactive Sunday Zoom sessions, and personal homework to sharpen your strategy. And you'll also join our private Discord group for direct access to me and unlock a complete library of A to Z video lessons to master supply and demand trading. Don't miss out. Let's level up your trading. Links in the description down below. So like I was saying, that 4-hour downward trend line is being respected. Shorts are fine. However, once we hit this 1-hour demand zone, if you are short on the day trading time frame with that 4-hour downward trend line, that's fine. Once we hit this demand zone, you got to be looking to maybe wrap that trade up or be selling some of your position. Because yeah, this zone could break, but it's also very possible we do get a nice rally up off of it, especially since we are bullish on the DXY. So it's definitely an area to keep in mind at if you are getting in short. It might be best to at least put your stop to break even or lock in 75% of your gains or whatever, because it's a high probability area. We do see a move off that zone, especially if we do react off of that liquidity again. So for this week on the yen, we will be monitoring and trading along with that downward trend line on the 4-hour chart on a 15-minute time frame, all the way at least down to that 1-hour demand zone where we can then get a potential long trade at. And if we break that 1-hour demand zone, to me, that shows us we're headed down to the daily demand. On to the forecast for the GBPUSD. This is a very, very confusing chart when you do multiple time frame analysis. So if you guys have any questions about this pound or anything, let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. So the highest time frame we use here for these forecasts is the weekly chart. The weekly trend is not only up, but we have a weekly demand in control. That's a bullish sign for the pound, which is obviously bearish for the dollar here. However, I am bullish on the dollar based on the fact that we are into that weekly demand on the DXY, which means we could see the pound really start to tank here if the dollar starts to rise. So that's what's confusing about this weekly time frame. What is also confusing is, well, it's not super confusing, but on this daily chart, we had a nice daily downward trend, and that downward trend was recently removed. I don't really have any demand here that removed it. It barely just doesn't qualify. This is a supply zone we're back into. This is a supply zone trade we called out in a previous weekly Forex forecast. You guys can go back to mid-July. You can see I called out this daily supply ahead of time, unlike your favorite guru on YouTube or whatever you want to call it. Just a little joke, sorry. Don't kill me for it. Anyways, daily supply is in control for the second time. It's already been tested though, so I don't give it too much weight. Yes, it's certainly possible we do react off of it, especially since we barely contacted it before. However, it's a tested zone, so I'm really not super confident in it. And since the weekly demand is in control, longs are kind of preferred here. It's just a weird time. The 4-hour demand zone that was the reaction off of the weekly zone is all the way down below at 1.319. It's a good zone. It's just it's taken so long to pull back into it. It's not my favorite situation anymore, but if we do get a pullback down to that 4-hour zone, I think it could represent a pretty good buying opportunity. We will definitely have to monitor the DXY to see, what happens as we push in this demand zone. How much of a trade we could really get off of it's going to determine on the DXY as well. But what I'm seeing right now, as far as so basically a weekly trend trumps a daily chart. So with the 1 hour trend of the upside right now in the pound, I personally think longs are going to be fine. What you need to monitor is this 1 hour trend line though. As long as this 1 hour trend line is holding, 5-minute time frame longs are good. But look, if we break this 1 hour trend and there's a 1 hour supply there, I think it could represent a pretty good trading opportunity, especially since we're in the daily supply. The daily supply is tested, but the fact that we're bullish on the dollar kind of trumps that. So I'll be watching out for a potential daily supply here if we do break the trend line. And if you're a day trader, that's fine. We have a nice trend line. Hopefully it can hold for you and you can continue to look for longs on a 5-minute chart. You might notice this demand zone all the way down below at 1.33. Again, it's a very, very old zone. However, if we do come back to the zone and react off this liquidity area again to prove there's liquidity there, then I like that demand zone pullback. I really wanted to get the pullback like here. We didn't get it. So at this point, if we do want to trade the zone, in my opinion, we got to see a reaction off this liquidity to make that a higher odds situation here on the GBPUSD. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDCAD top-down approach here. Weekly trend line, and demand zone in control. So it's kind of a weird, I've never really seen that too much, where we have a weekly trend, weekly demand, and a trend line all in control at 3 times. Definitely a bullish sign, especially since we are bullish on the DXY. On the daily chart, we were clearly ranging here, and we just recently broke out of that range. And that's nice to see. Definitely a positive sign. However, it's not the most bullish sign. We kind of want to break above that high, which would really show us that price is taking off. And the reason this rectangle box is here is because this was liquidity. And there's actually a very good daily demand zone back here. Not very good. It's pretty decent. And I thought maybe it was possible we do react off this daily demand zone. Doesn't look like we are going to do that. But look, even if we start to really tank on the USDCAD here, that's fine. We have that daily zone that's kind of act as our backstop for potential long trades as well. Right now, I'm really not seeing a whole lot for zones, I will be honest. However, on the 4-hour chart, we do have a pretty nice 4-hour trend line to the upside. So I will say, as long as this trend line's holding, I think looking for longs on a 15-minute chart is going to be pretty good. You might notice this 4-hour demand zone down below. It's not bad. The only thing it really has going for it is the fact that it removed a pretty significant supply zone, and the initial candle move away is pretty good. However, I don't love this price action here. Definitely not my favorite zone. So look, if price does pull back down this demand zone, I think looking for confirmation on a 50-minute time frame or a 5-minute time frame is going to be probably necessary, because it's not really an area where I'm like, oh, I'm buying right at this exact point. It's not really even noticeable. If the move away was like amazing, you know, like this zone or something like that, amazing move away, then it'd be different. But it's a barely noticeable zone. That's why I'm saying confirmation there is going to be definitely preferred. But for now, I want to be monitoring this trend line and looking for longs on the day trading timeframes as long as that trend line is being respected. And obviously, we got to monitor the DXY daily trend line as well. All right, on to the forecast for the AUDUSD. Something interesting took place. We just missed this daily supply zone. Now, I get tons of messages and comments. What do we do in this situation? Well, look, if my zone was drawn like this, where we just barely missed it, it is safe sometimes to just nudge it up just a little bit to say that it's tested, just to be conservative. It doesn't hurt to be conservative. However, that's not how I drew it. It was drawn like this. It's far enough where I'm not just going to change the way I draw it, especially since it wouldn't really make much sense as far as how a zone looks. So I'm not going to change it. Obviously, some sort of selling and supply is up here. So if we do push up here, I think it's a high probability that we do even see another push, or sorry, the first push off of it, especially since it's some sort of liquidity now. So I still think it's a valid supply zone, but obviously, you know, some sort of selling did take place up here. Now, we did catch a beautiful 4-hour supply zone trade off of that 4-hour supply zone I've been calling out in the daily market breakdown videos. And look, why did this trade work? Well, one, look at this aggressive move away, amazing move away. And that's something we discuss, as you can see in this PDF. This is just one page out of the full 38-page PDF that comes with the Diamond membership. So if you guys want access to that and much more, join the Diamond membership. And now we got that nice move off that 4-hour supply zone, and that actually created a whole other zone. So let me just delete the circle. We have a whole other zone because it removed a trend line. Not my favorite situation when a zone is created from a previous zone that we've already traded from. However, it's still a decent zone that we could see a move off of. We saw beautiful trades like this take place on gold a couple weeks ago on the 1-hour chart. You can go back and watch those breakdown videos as well. And we caught beautiful setups where it was supply zone after supply zone being created from previous zones. So it's still a decent zone to look for shorts off of, and we could be targeting the liquidity down below. And as always, you could just be looking for confirmation trades in there if you don't feel confident in it, because it's been pretty much reacted off the previous zone. But again, we have a demand zone back here with liquidity down below. We easily could be targeting that liquidity, and it's possible we do retrace up to that 4-hour supply first before we target it. So it could represent a pretty good opportunity for a short trade. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, we actually have a pretty good supply zone here with a liquidity trap. Now here, what I would prefer to see is another reaction off this liquidity, then a pullback to that supply, and hopefully get a trade like that. It's a very nice drop base, drop supply zone with, again, another amazing move away, a very, very aggressive move off that from that supply zone. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a nice move off that supply. So that's what I'd be looking for here on the AUDUSD. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDCHF. We're going to keep this very, very simple. We have a pretty old weekly demand zone in control from all the way back here. So it's not my favorite situation. However, the weekly demand on the DXY is also in control. So we are actually expecting this to go up, and our bias is certainly to the long side. However, on the 4-hour time frame, look at what has taken place. We recently, this past week, broke this low, which has given us that low, obviously, which has given us a pretty nice 4-hour downward trend. So as long as this downward trend line's holding, you can justify looking for shorts on a 15-minute time frame to potentially trade all the way down to this 4-hour demand at 0.796, where we can then potentially get a dip buying opportunity. We will obviously be talking about it when price hits down to that zone to see what takes place. But look, there's tons of profit margin on the downside. It is a little bit aggressive to short since the weekly demand is in control. However, we cannot deny this very nice trend to the downside and potentially look for day trading shorts. But look, if we break this trend line here, boom, what we need to do is hold off from shorts from here to here, and then we can short again at this supply zone. But again, the shorts at the supply zone, we're going to have to be aggressive with profit taking due to the fact that it is going against a weekly demand zone that's in control. So to summarize, as long as this downward trend line is holding, 15-minute time frame shorts are good. As soon as we break this trend line, we have to hold off on shorts until this supply zone is contacted. Then we could look for shorts again, but we have to be aggressive with profit taking. And it would be preferred if we can react off this liquidity area again, that would be preferred as well. Now for long trades, again, the weekly demand is in control down here, so longs are actually preferred. For long trades, we either need to wait for this 4-hour demand zone to be hit, or if we get a confirmation by doing something like this, where we get a good demand zone that removes the downward trend line, that's going to represent our buying opportunity as well. The best scenario would be something like this, where we break the trend line and the supply, leaving us with a very good demand zone and then the pullback. It's also possible that we break the trend line, leave us with the demand zone there, get along at the demand zone, break the supply, give us a new demand zone. We move our stop from here to here, get along at this demand zone again. So many opportunities. It's going to be an exciting week if we can push up here on the USD Swiss. Last but not least, we are onto the forecast for crude oil. And if you guys want help with your trading psychology, check out my podcast, the Stoic Trading Psychology Podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever it's called, and anywhere you get your podcast, it should be available. So make sure you check that out. Very, very important part of trading. On the weekly time frame, we have a weekly demand in control. The weekly trend is to the downside. So yes, we are bullish, but we are moderately bullish. If this was a weekly demand zone in control with a weekly trend to the upside, it would be very bullish. If this weekly demand was in control and we were in a sideways market, I would be moderately bullish. Since we are, in a downward trend here, we're kind of bullish. Not super duper bullish, but the weekly demand is in control. We kind of have to go with that. Against us is this daily downward trend, however, but it doesn't. So basically, it's not great. However, obviously, in order to pull back into a weekly demand zone, it's pretty much needed to have a daily downward trend, right? So it's almost required to have this. So it's not the worst case scenario, but it is something to consider that we do have that daily downward trend that's looking pretty significant. Now, since that weekly demand is in control, our bias is to the long side. However, the price action has not been too great. We have a supply zone above here. We almost reacted off of it. We've pretty much created some sort of liquidity up here again. A lot of the zones not really getting there. So a little bit tricky this past week. However, if we do hit this supply zone, could be good for a quick short trade. But since the weekly demand's in control, I'm actually expecting it to break. So if we can break that supply, any demand zone there is going to be a good dip buying opportunity, especially since, we will have that basically the weekly demand's in control. So that's why we are preferring longs. And look, if we break that high, then we will actually have a nice 1 hour trend to the upside. Then 5-minute time frame longs are going to be good. So I personally think we're potentially setting up for a nice trading setup if we do push up. If we continue to break down, it's going to be tricky. Again, I'm bullish on oil based on that weekly demand and control. So we have to go with that based off of how I see things. So I'm only looking for longs. If we break below there, I'm just personally not going to be trading it. I'd rather be getting in long. That's why I'm personally going to be looking for, like I said, those confirmation trades. And look, if we break that 1 hour low, that's fine. That will give us that daily downward trend more confidence, and then we actually could justify continuing to look for shorts, but cautiously since the weekly demand is in control. So hopefully you understand why I am bullish. And look, there's been so many times where I will admit I'm wrong. So many times where a weekly demand is in control for like a week or two and we ended up breaking it. But I can't be bearish at a weekly demand zone. I just cannot. And if we break it, that's fine. Then we could look for shorts. But for now, I'm going to remain bullish, but doesn't mean I'm just hopping on the trend or the trade right now. We got to wait for confirmation. If you want access to the full Forex forecast, make sure you subscribe to the Diamond membership, where you get access not only to my daily chart analysis, but also my daily forecast, where I forecast basically like this forecast, but every single day for the members. It also comes with the 38-page PDF, which is your guide for trading as well. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.